Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today for engagement and education with the Indigenous Mapping and Research Project. My name is Kara. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the program coordinator at Partnership for the National Trail System. I will be serving as today's webinar moderator. For those of you who may not be familiar with Partnership for the National Trail System, PNTS is a small nonprofit that's a collective voice, a resource provider, and a hub for exchange, learning, and action for the National Trail System. As the only 501c3 nonprofit focused on the 30 national scenic and historic trails, PNTS brings together professionals, leaders, and trail and hiking enthusiasts to promote a thriving, accessible, and inclusive national trail system. Today, I'm speaking to you from the lands of the Onondaga and Haudenosaunee people. PNTS recognizes that land acknowledgements are an important first step in acknowledging that we are in stolen Indigenous lands. There will soon be a link in the chat where you can explore what native lands you currently reside on. Please enter in the chat what lands you're joining us from, as well as introduce yourself and let us know what organization you're affiliated with. PNTS recognizes the need to commit further and engage in meaningful partnerships. PNTS is committed to working with Indigenous people, organizations, and communities, and having Indigenous people lead the way through initiatives such as our tribal consultation webinar series that just wrapped up. Our commitment proceeds into the future through projects such as the Indigenous Mapping and Research Project, which provides resources to help advance National Trail System awareness and education of Indigenous knowledge and stewardship. This webinar is being recorded and will be available to everyone that registered following the live presentation. Today's session will go for about 75 minutes and we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. As we go, please put any questions or comments you have into the chat. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's first speaker, Karin Farley with the Bureau of Land Management. And now I'll hand it off to Karin to get us started.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our first webinar. A little background on this project I wanted to just start with. On Wednesday, the 2nd of November, at the Partnership for National Trail System workshop in New Mexico, I had the honor to introduce Ancestral Lands AmeriCorps intern Kiana Itsati-Gashatiwa to present the National Scenic and Historic Trails Program's Indigenous Mapping and Research Project, quote unquote, Native Lands National Trails, as the logo says. The release of this project was intentionally planned in celebration of Native American Heritage Month. This year's theme is revitalizing Indigenous connections, and that embodies the work that we've been doing and plotting over the last 2 years. Uplifting the stories and histories of Indigenous communities so that we can grow stronger and more resilient together. That's a quote from Deb Haaland, Secretary of the Interior, my boss, proud to say, from earlier this month. We had amazing feedback on our presentation at the workshop, and we're glad you are here with us today to learn more. One of our longstanding board members stated that this work was, quote unquote, a great moment in national trail history. Again, like Kara said, my name is Karin Farley, and I'm the National Scenic Historic Trails Program Lead for the BLM, Bureau of Land Management. And I'm calling in from Reno, Nevada, the home of the Washoe and Northern Paiute people. And it's my honor to provide first the background to this project and some of our partners. But first, I'd like to introduce the woman of the hour, Kiana, who will provide some ground rules for the session before we begin. So go ahead, Kiana.
Yeah, Alaka Karin. It's taking a moment. Okay, here we go. So to open up, we'll have a few ground rules for the webinar. To start, please keep an open mind, open heart with this project. It's not just a project, but more than that, for our people and our communities, both trail and Indigenous, to bridge these. I do ask to hold this knowledge with respect and in ways that will help you understand. Next, number 2, viewing land stewardship as reciprocal or having reciprocity. Many Indigenous cultures have the basis of viewing this as a continuous relationship to take care of one another, but also understand the land can also hold themselves as well. Number 3, trails go beyond histories and are seen as integral and intimate ways of being and knowing to and with Indigenous communities. Number 4, please conduct your own research if and when necessary. Number 5, recognizing the inherent and true sovereignty of Indigenous nations, that Indigenous nations are indeed sovereign and hold their own rights, responsibilities, and laws to cater to what interests they hold firm and true to. Number 6, this is coming from a young Pueblo woman perspective. So this project is based on my experience. Much like vast tribal and trail diversity we have, I would like to recognize the communities I come from, along with my gender, age, cultural upbringing, and personal experience does indeed shape this project in a way that may and is different from other Indigenous communities, individuals, and nations. Elanka, thank you. And I'll turn it back over to Karen to further introduce the project.
Thanks, Kiana. And we'll be hearing a lot from Kiana later after this background, but thank you, Kiana, for that opening. I'm now going to share with you guys a thoughtful project acknowledgement that was created by the previous executive director of Native Lands Digital, Christine McCrae, and Kiana. Trails are Indigenous. Trails flow and live through the territories and are guides for many histories, people, animals, and entities living and non-living. We acknowledge that this project aims to strengthen relations for national trails and Indigenous communities throughout Indigenous territories in what is now considered the United States. As we all know, acknowledgement without action, authenticity, and structural change is quite frankly an empty gesture. In summer 2020, I was transitioning into this current role as program lead with the BLM after witnessing the ebb and flow of tribal relationships in my previous position. I knew I wanted to continue to try to improve these and strengthen these partnerships through action, and also create some space for Indigenous voices to support that voice. I was hearing land acknowledgements on the calls and conferences. This was kind of hitting, I don't know if you all remember, but summer 2020 is when I started noticing them on calls and conferences. And some were really good and some were really, really bad. And I knew that wasn't enough. So in my mind, change requires crucial conversations. And I spent several months thinking of ways to create space in my new position. The relationships with place and the land strengthens our understanding of ourselves and also the historic events and patterns of our national trails. It also strengthens our understanding of current day cultures and how they relate to that land. These lands that the trails cross over are places of cultural significance where the landscape is bound to everything that was and still is. And I feel very, really grateful that through this administration's priorities, the federal government is finally starting to acknowledge and focus in efforts on integrating this holistic way of understanding into our work. It's made me really appreciate the creativity and new partnerships that we've been allowed to engage in. So I moved from Albuquerque to Nevada in that fall of 2020. I was thinking of ideas in a conversation with a staff member at a trail interpretive center in Nevada. They spoke of an elder in the visitor center lobby looking at a map. And he stated that there was something missing, that his story was missing from that map. And immediately after that conversation, a mapping idea was sparked. And so many ideas, although original to like my mind or our minds, they're being created by like minds all over the world. And I would come to find that a friend of mine, Julie Jutkins at the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, had just fostered a mapping project on the AT, the Appalachian Trail, that mirrored what I wanted to do on a national scale. A map that would combine Native Lands Digital and the National Trail System map we are also familiar with. It could be used by those in the field or those interpretive centers to tell that missing part of the story, the kinship of the land with the Indigenous communities that the trails pass through. So I was familiar with Native Lands Digital. It was being referenced on calls, like I said, and even by Secretary Holland during her travels. Native Lands Digital is a Canadian nonprofit organization that strives to create and foster conversations about the history of colonialism, Indigenous ways of knowing, and settler Indigenous relations through educational resources like their map and territory acknowledgement guide. They've developed this platform where Indigenous communities can represent themselves and their histories on their own terms, which is different than what the federal government has done in the past. So I reached out to then Executive Director Christine McCrae during the quiet Christmas break and pitched a partnership. And she was graciously all in. We are lucky to have Native Land Digital with us today, and I would like to turn it over to them to tell you a bit more about their organization. And so with that, I'd I'd like to pass it over to Kyle Napier and Michaela Rollins, who will just share a few words and some slides, and then pass it back for some more background. Thank you, Michaela.
Thank you, Karen. Hello, everyone. I'm coming to you from Tongva Gabrielino land in Los Angeles. I'm gonna try and share my screen. Oops. Perfect. And I'll be joined today by Kyle Napier, and he will chime in as he sees anything to be added as well. I'll start with a quick intro of myself. I am Pam Kulichum. I'm a descendant of the Saboba and Pechanga band. I grew up in Hemet, California, so I'm not far from my ancestral homeland right now. These images are just a glimpse of the beautiful landscape that I call home, and just very fortunate to be able to share this with you all today. This is a screenshot of the website and where I come from. It's really small, but we'll have more slides later on that give more of a close-up. But this is just kind of to give you a glimpse of the complexities of Native Land Digital and the layers that we do have on the map. And just to give a quick overview of like what people see when they first enter an address or a name of a place. And so here you can see there's 3 or 4 layers around just my homeland, because we are neighbored by the Kuya. And so we share a lot of this land. And so it creates multiple layers, which can get confusing sometimes to people. A quick little intro of this as well. Native Land is available on a website and or a mobile app. It offers information on Indigenous territories in almost 30 countries, representing thousands of Indigenous groups. This updates constantly. We're constantly making changes to our map. Every day we have research staff that do this for us, and they're amazing. And so whenever requests are taken in, they come through me via email. I'm the volunteer coordinator and communications assistant. So I'll take in those emails and send them to the research team, and they will have a few slides later as well that show the intricacies that they have to go through in order to make these layers. To give you a bit of history of Native Land Digital, the organization began in the winter of 2014 in Vancouver, British Columbia, when the founder, Victor Temprano, a non-Indigenous person, began to consider more deeply the people's history of the landscapes in British Columbia. In response, he created a digital platform that mapped Indigenous territories, languages, and place names, beginning in North America and increasingly the world. This is how it's going. This is currently what our map looks like, and the view that you'll see when you open the website. And Victor quickly understood that he would need help from Indigenous communities that he was mapping. By 2020, Native Land became registered not-for-profit and is governed by Indigenous Board of Directors, which Kyle is a part of, and led by an Indigenous Executive Director, which we are working on currently. By 2021, Native Land Digital grew in team members, and today we have, I believe, up to 3 research team members, 2 communications, plenty of volunteers, and still growing today. I'll be very brief about this. The concept of territory for Native Land Digital, it's very complex, as we all know. But from our perspective as a team, we're currently developing a framework for an Indigenous research methodology. You'll see a bit further during the presentation that our research is open sourced. It's not solely academic. We answer to and listen to our Indigenous tribal communities first and foremost. They are our priority, and whatever suggestions or edits were given by non-Indigenous folks or researchers or academics, we always try to run that by a community member, or we have to make sure that it matches their story as well, you know. We understand that we are in a unique situation where we have a lot of we're the guardians of the spirit of life force of Indigenous nations. We hold a lot of this data, but we want it to be open. We want it to be an open conversation for folks to come to us or for us to come to them, and an open dialogue. The polygons on the site cannot represent the ancestral connection to that land. We're very aware of that, because us as Indigenous folks, we feel that, and we understand that our goal and our efforts are to shift the narrative and prompt non-Indigenous folks to engage with this conversation as well. So diving into some numbers real quick. These are updated as of this past Indigenous Peoples Day. We had over 900,000 visitors to the site, and we definitely saw that influx in communication with folks through emails and suggestions and interest. So, and as of right now, we have about 5 board members. The polygons on the map, this number is constantly being updated. Like I said, we are working to spread more territories to Africa, Europe, Asia, and just more globally. So how does it work? We have a website, like I said. We'll go through that process very quickly in just a minute. We also have the app. You can find it on the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. So it's very accessible in that way. This is a screenshot from the opening page of the website. And so typically what you'll do first, you'll type in either a country, a city, or a very specific address of what you are looking for. And you'll be able to type it into the search bar on the left. And you'll get a highlighted polygon of that location. And the peoples that are affiliated with that land, or the tribal nations with that land, will pop up underneath treaties, and there might be several. And like I said, this is what kind of brings up the complexities of our map, because we do want to represent all peoples of that land, and some people may not understand that. So it's always a constant explanation, but so the polygons will be overlapping, and that's okay, because our borders, as we all know, they don't line up with today's borders. So we try to represent that as best as we can. So with these links below treaties and to the peoples, you'll be able to click on the link, and those links will lead you to resource pages for those groups. And our research team does an amazing job of trying to update these pages as often as possible with websites for those individual nations, as well as any sources that they used to map these polygons. And then any other resources that were sent via just other folks in the community, we'll be sure to add those as well. We also provide a space for people to leave messages, to send in. This is where they can send in their edits or suggestions. And we do get those directly, and we do try to reply to all of them as best as we can. Sometimes it is a bit hard to get to all of them, but it is available. This is what our research team sees. This is from our side. We use Jira, but they will be able to put edits and suggestions and into this software to be able to map them and gather as much resources and research them as best as possible before mapping. If we are given a request by a tribal nation, that goes to the top of the priority list. And this is the software that we use for mapping the polygons. This is what they see in Mapbox. I don't know a lot about this, I'm sorry. I'm also running low on time, so we're gonna go to the next slide. API, people ask us for what we use for like our sources for the polygons, if they can have our shape files or JSONs, and this is all open source. So this is on our website. People can go to this, they can look at what we use, and there are newsletters and write-ups and blog posts about how to use the API. So that's all accessible here. This is the tech side of everything. Just a glimpse. Kyle, did you want to say anything about this or about Anchorage, code for Anchorage real quick?
That's right. So both Whose Land and Code for Anchorage are examples of partnerships and relationships that we've maintained. I mean, it's not just partnerships and relationships with Indigenous communities across the world, but also those quite like those that we're co-presenting with today who have an interest in decolonizing cartographies. And a big portion of that, as we'd heard, is beyond acknowledgements without action. It is taking tangible steps to reface the conversation. And so through these through these tools of digital cartographic decolonization, we're hoping to engage the conversation much more globally. And so these are examples that exist, like Whose Land has existed for those predominantly based in what's colonially referred to as Canada. Code for Anchorage was a partnership that emerged in the last year. And so also in our scope of working not just with communities, but also institutions, organizations, and ultimately with individuals to help to change the face of conversation. What does it mean to exist and to live on Indigenous lands and with overlapping ancestral Indigenous communities? And so that's part of why we're facilitating these partnerships so heartfully.
Thank you, Kyle. So, and as the volunteer coordinator, I will pitch this. We do have a volunteers page on the website, and we're always welcoming new volunteers. We are in a bit of a transition phase in the organization, so but we're always welcome to new volunteers. This is the GitHub for anyone that is tech savvy and would like to join our GitHub. And this is just a glimpse of what's coming up for us. We are hiring a new executive director, Indigenous translations. We are constantly being asked about pronunciation and translations. And then more blog posts and community-driven content is what we're looking for. Publishing on our research methodology. And honestly, just really expanding the map. We just really want to expand the map, and we know that there's a need and a push and a want for that. And we're really, truly working on that. And we want everyone to know that. And we do see how we can improve, and we're open to feedback from anyone as well. So feel free to message or chat. Thanks.
Thank you, Michaela and Kyle. So great. And I think it's important to point out that like they said, this information is available and free to the public, but in this partnership, we felt it was important to put our money where our mouths are and support an organization like this and in partnership. And so without that partnership, this project would be entirely different. So it's, like I said, a collaborative in nature, and the pieces started falling into place after I talked to Christine. Our host today, PNTS, has a longstanding assistance agreement with the BLM and their valuable partners and advocates for our national trail system. Valerie and the team agreed to support and host the project and final product. So again, putting our funding where our mouths are, we wanted an Indigenous youth to steward the project with their perspective. So we reached out to Conservation Legacies Ancestral Lands Program to recruit, because I think most of us on this call probably realize that hiring in the federal government is very hard. So this organization leads underrepresented Indigenous youth and youth adults in conservation service programs that reconnect participants to the land, their culture, heritage, and their traditions, and hoping to create pathways to education and employment in these fields, which is something really important to this administration and again, my boss, Secretary of Interior. So Ryan Aguilar is here from the Corps from Ancestral Lands. And Ryan, would you like to say a few words about the organization, perhaps any other thoughts on the project?
Ella, yes. Kishi Kotanawan Dawka, Ryan Aguilar election, Hamanati Doa Kotan Dakya Gawan Chatla. Good morning. My name is Ryan Aguilar. My clans are Corn and Child Frog. I am Ancestral Lands Conservation Corps program manager for our individual placements program. It's an honor to be here to talk to you all for a few minutes about conservation legacy and Ancestral Lands Conservation Corps. The mission of Ancestral Lands Conservation Corps is leading our nations to ecological and cultural well-being. Ancestral Lands Conservation Corps, or ALCC, is a core program that has offices based out of Acoma Pueblo, Gallup, New Mexico, which serves the Navajo Nation, Zuni Pueblo, Hopi, Kiksopsmovie, and Albuquerque, which serves our local indigenous tribes and pueblos there in the Rio Grande Valley, and neighboring as well. ALCC originally began in 2008, founded by Colonel Toribio, and has since blossomed into the program and conservation corps that it is. We originally started with Southwest Conservation Corps as its AL, or Ancestral Lands program. And in 2021, we officially became a standalone program of conservation legacy. So we are now ALCC, as mentioned. Our program strives to cultivate a new generation of local land stewards. We partner with local tribal communities, nonprofit organizations, land agency managers, or federal agencies to accomplish the impactful and lasting conservation service projects that we do. ALCC works to build and support sustainable public access, historical interpretation, and ecological health. Our crews and interns have been working on these types of projects, from historical preservation, traditional agriculture, chainsaw, hiking clubs, GIS, stream restoration, fencing, trail construction, and so much more. We are a national service program through and partner also with AmeriCorps. So a majority of our participants are AmeriCorps National Service participants. This year in 2022, through the 5 offices, crew offices that we have currently, we were able to fill 28 crews. We were able to put 1 hiking club together, as well as a farm corps or farm crew based out of Acoma. Our internship program, our individual placements program, was able to field 30 interns, or IPs as we call them. And we are very honored and excited to support this project and our individual placement, Kiana. We have a presentation and so much more, but out of respect for time, I will include our website address in the chat. So if you have continued interest in our organization and program, please feel free to check that out. You can check out our organization and other sister programs through that link as well. But basically, yeah, as Karen mentioned, we got the call and interest from those individuals. A lot of planning and meetings went into this project, and that's what I really love about our crew and individual placements programs is we can ask the communities, ask what's needed out there, the type of impactful service we can provide through our crews and internships. And so when we got the word about this project, we were very excited and eager to partner with Bureau of Land Management, Forest Service, Native Lands Digital, a partnership for National Trails And so, yeah, it's been a very great collaborative effort. We are all very excited for the work that Kiana has been able to accomplish, and it's just very exciting, and I'm very honored to be able to witness folks like Kiana who come in with that open mind and open heart and willingness to learn, and yeah, just seeing what type of impactful work and community impacts, and just overall, getting our young youth, Indigenous youth, to be able to be exposed to these types of projects and see what they're able to accomplish. So without further ado, I want to allow Kiana to, share with you all what that project entails, the Indigenous Mapping and Research Project. And again, it's been an honor to be the direct supervisor and support for Kiana. So I've seen, all the work and all the effort that's gone into the workshops that were held in Albuquerque at the beginning of November, as well as this webinar. So without further ado, I'll pass it back over to Karen and Kiana for the continued presentation. But yeah, if you are interested in ALCC or Conservation Legacy, I'll throw in the link into the chat. Thank you very much for allowing me a few minutes to talk about our organization and program.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate all your time in the last year and a little over a year. And it's been really great working. Not the end, I'm sure, of our partnership. So again, yeah, the Forest Service also contributed funds to this project, like Ryan said. The map and the toolkit will be hosted on the PNTS website for all to use, hopefully by the end of the calendar year. This project's evolving. Before I turn it over to Kiana, because she is really who you all came here to see, not listen to me, before she shares her work, I just want to take a minute to say thank you to her. She's taken this project on with a passion. She's reached out and engaged new partners like Esri, the well-known leader in GIS software mapping. She's also learned a whole new set of career skills and proven to be just a rising leader among her peers. And I couldn't be more proud of this work and Kiana, and I'm really excited, as we all are, to see where she takes her talents and her big heart from here. So without further ado, take it away, Kiana, it's all yours.
Yeah, Alaka. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Ryan. And before I hop into my introduction, I do want to acknowledge the land. So I am coming to you from my ancestral homelands in Shewena, or also known as the middle place of the world, or AKA Zuni, New Mexico. And so there's a picture of Diwar, Secret Mountain, and getting right into it. Sorry, my slides are a little behind. So to introduce, Keshi Kotandawan and Nataya, Kiana eats at the gash right there, Leshina, Hum Anatia, Mulabichi Kotan, Donaka Awan Chatle. Shiwi down Mukui Bachina Hoi, Hum Tita Stephanie Tanario, Dapum Dachila, gash right there, Leshina, Hum Aslashina Archie, we put up Eva eats at the Leshina. To translate, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good day, everybody. My name is Kiana Itzati Gashwaitewa. I first would like to thank everybody in attendance, those who are joining in right now and those who will see this later on. It's been quite an honor to work on this project with so many amazing individuals and partners. Nevertheless, beginning that translation, my name is Kiana Itzati Gashwaitewa. I come from the Pueblo Zuni and the Hopi tribes. I am a proud Parrot clan member. I am a child and also a child of a turkey. My parents are Stephanie Tenario and my dad is La Gashwaitewa. My grandparents are the ones who had raised me, and I consider them my parents too. And their names are Wipo and Eva Itzati. I am also an individual placement with the Ancestral Lands Conservation Corps, and I'm placed with the Partnership for the National Trail System, where I work as the Indigenous Mapping and Research Project Coordinator. I also have my Bachelor of Science degrees from Northern Arizona University and apply Indigenous Studies and Political Science. Go Jacks. And my primary focus in life is to serve my Indigenous and Zuni communities and capacities that require attention, where I can best apply my experience, knowledge, and strengths. Also, to give a little bit more background, I grew up deeply culturally rooted in community, culture, and language. In our Zuni ways, we have ways and roles that we serve that collectively create balance to take care of our people and our land. Knowing this, it wasn't a big change to funnel that energy into trails. When the pandemic hit, my connection to the land completely strengthened as I invested more time into running, hiking, and gardening. And as a Pueblo woman, this is my responsibility to have and hold a healthy, nurturing, reciprocal relationship with our Abu Dilintita, or Mother Earth. So there's a little bit about me. And to also get more background information on this project, just throwing it out there, is cartography. Understanding that cartography is indigenous. Indigenous cartographers has existed since time immemorial. Indigenous cartography has been documented and well preserved through oral and physical records. And nowadays, in this modern time, we have begun transitioning into digital spaces and online formats, but also taking note that Western cartography has been used as a tool of colonization, aiding to erase indigenous communities, where this project aims to not cause harm, but uplift through mapping. And so we have some real quick examples of what indigenous cartography looks like with Turtle Island or the Americas, with some of our relative stories up north. And then also, this is from one of the counter mapping initiatives that was created by Ashimawa Museum, or the Zuni Museum, with our Zuni cultural ways of cartography, but just put on on a format where we can visually see it. So visual aid is really really key, and cartography also just does the same. And this is what it looks like within our communities. And to also give a little bit more background about a national trail system, in case you didn't know, as I came into this project, I did not know we had a national trail system. So to give a little bit more insight, a brief overview is that we have 3 different types of national trails, but for this project, we focus on National Historic Trails, NHT, and National Scenic Trails, NST. There are 30 congressionally designated trails throughout the United States. Fun fact, a majority of the population lives within 2 hours from a national trail. So you can see our trail map, courtesy of National Park Service. If you find yourself on the map, you can see some trails and where they are around you. And I wanted to mention our indigenous trails, indigenous national trails. Briefly, Alakahakai National Historic Trail located in Hawaii, Trail Atiers National Historic Trail, and also Nez Perce Nimipu National Historic Trail. For additional information, please feel free to visit our PNTS website at pnts.org to learn a little bit more about our national trail system. But going back to our indigenous national trails, these are trails that have more of the indigenous lens and the base, but it can also be argued that national trails are indigenous. All trails are indigenous because throughout this land, it is all stolen land, and you're on native land no matter where you're at. And to jump right into the project, the Indigenous Mapping and Research Project, again, is in partnership with our partners listed, Native Land Digital, Bureau of Land Management, Ancestral Lands Conservation Corps, and the Partnership for the National Trail System. And we've also had funding from U.S. Forest Service. The general overview is that our project will help basic sources and initiative GIS map to help our federal agencies that administer our national trails and their nonprofit trail organization partners to advance national trail system knowledge of indigenous ancestral lands and increase partnerships and collaborations with indigenous communities along national scenic and national historic trails. And so it is an Indigenous Mapping and Research Project, and our project title is now Native Lands and National Trails. Okay, and just to give a little bit more background about IMRP in general, we, like Kari mentioned, like this has been in the works for a couple of months, couple of years. This project officially launched in January 2022, where I came on board and also just like got everything going. We began to start to reach out to trail organizations and within the community to assess really what is out there and what is needed, because this is it's a really huge project. It's nationwide. And just to see where our trail organizations are at with the scope of things, if there's any differences between National Scenic, National Historic, what they're just gauging what our community needs, and delivering our resources and guides, understanding like our insight of our supervisors from our different partners, what they're able to see and bring, and just building that sense of overall community, understanding relationships within the trails community, and having our project plans being the basis of creating an interactive GIS map and a toolkit or just like a resource guide has been that forefront. But getting there, we've taken all different sorts of ways, because it's so wide, it's so diverse, it's so vast. Also wanting to acknowledge that this work has been going on for years, and it's not just the start of the IMRP, but it's a continuation of the work that has been done for years. And also starting, just acknowledging the place that we're in, creating the community and a centralized location for it to move forward into the future within our national trail system, and with hoping to partner with Indigenous communities. And here it is, our Native Lands National Trails. And starting first with our map, just overall things that led us into our map is that we utilize the Native Land Digital's data from their API. And the data matters, the sources and information insight that we get for our map, it really truly matters, because when we were creating, the concept of this project was beginning is that we want it to be more inclusive rather than exclusive. And as Native Land Digital mentioned earlier, there's a lot more inclusion. It goes beyond the concepts of borders and boundaries, where we didn't have those hard lines or harsh definitions on maps when we had our ways of cartography or being or knowing. But with the data from Native Land Digital, it brings the more conversation to the table. And that's what we were overall looking for too. And then also for our Esri Trail data is from the National Park Service. So we just took their data, created as layers to create in our creation of our map. And something that I like to note is that I didn't come into this project with, I came into this project with no GIS skills, but thankfully from Esri, I've gained a good amount of skillage to create a map. And it, to me, I was like, well, how hard could it be to create a map? But it was really hard. There's so many different avenues of ways to creating, framing, and also just like the nitty-gritty of like Arcade, API, JSON files, transferring left and right. And so it was a really good learning process for me in that way. But going back to it, having our representation of Indigenous nations was important because it's Native nations, federally recognized tribes alone, there are 574. That doesn't include state or non-recognized tribes, and also including our Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian recognition too within this data set for our national trails. And with this map, there's a lot of political versus cultural perspective. And so when we get into the map, you can see that visually, where as indigeneity is seen as more as a political perspective, our identity is political, but when it comes to mapping our cultural boundaries, that is that cultural side of things. And I think that's where Native Land Digital's data set really helps in that visualization. And just overall trying to stop the perpetration of colonial constructs like status, harsh borders, boundaries, and continuing to define our communities when we know what our communities are. But here's going to be a visualization of why this matters. And this is going to be with my own community. Excuse me, I have to pull that up. So what I wanted to make this, I made this map. It's called Zuni and the CDT. And I'm sorry for the abbreviations, but the Continental Divide Trail, it's a national scenic trail that goes from Mexico all the way to the Canadian border. But we know that our trails extend beyond borders. It goes all the way down and all the way up. But there's a portion of the CDT that is congressionally designated now that runs through our ancestral homelands. But to give more context, this is our layers. So this is the Continental Divide, really cool. Then we have our Zuni ancestral territory. So this is why the Native Land Digital data matters, is that it graphs a lot of the more ancestral territory rather than our federally recognized border or boundary of our reservation. So that little blue spot is my res, it's Zuni. We also have land in Arizona, but I'm trying not to share that for cultural reasons. This portion of the CDT, the Zuni to Acoma trailhead, is one of our ancestral trails. It's seen in different songs, prayers, stories where this is my Pueblo right here, and our sister Pueblo, Acoma Pueblo, is just right there. And so, like, if it was a long time ago, this is the trail that we would go use to go visit, go trade, etc. And now it's a part of the CDT. And so when the CDT was getting congressionally designated, like on paper, we wouldn't have to go through any sort of formal consultation because we're about 50 miles away. But when we bring in data like Native Land Digitals that acknowledge our cultural boundaries, ancestral territories, we are a part of the conversation. And it's just this is a visual way to show that that we're here in many different formats in many different ways, but also acknowledging that this layer of our ancestral territory is not correct either. Every time that I talk to some of my uncles or elders, they always extend this border and boundary because of our knowledge that's being held, always being added on, just like the Native Land Digital data, and it's always being updated. But again, like mentioned before, I highly encourage different types of research, because this is only an example, but there are different types of formal consultation that has been done, like within the CDT, on different nations, and I just wanted to give that visual aid to that. And so that's why it matters, and that's why for me, showing this of my lands, of my people really matters. And then going into our map disclaimer, we created this disclaimer to just acknowledge what we said before, the trail routes that are being used by National Park Service, and this is data from Native Land Digital, and acknowledging that the map is not perfect, but instead a continuous work in progress with contributions from community, as it is an open source data set. And if there's any errors, like mentioned earlier, you can contact Native Land Digital, voice your concerns, add things that you like, and they'll get back to you directly to update that in ways that fit. Excuse me. And that is our map disclaimer. So when we view our Native Lands National Trails map, this is the creation of what we have. Let me bring it up. Excuse me. One more over. Okay. All right, this is our map. Many different ways So let me get it centered. I'll take a few moments to pop up on your end. So this is the map with the native land digital data and our national trail system data. We have different layers of our different 30 national trails all on the side. You can choose if you want to like see them or not. You can hide them with the trails and also the native land digital layer too. So you can just mess with it and see what it's like to and wanting to showcase that one of our trails, Alakahakai, is located in Hawaii. And the way that we utilize this map is that we want to zoom in where Alakahakai is located. Click on Alakahakai, and it brings up this pop-up so we can see the land who Alakahakai is on or goes through. So Kanaka Maoli, our native Hawaiian. And so once this pops up, you can also go to the next feature and see like the Alakahakai trail data if interested, if you're into that sort of thing, for our map goers out there. But one of the greatest things I think about this map in particular is that you can go to the resources page, you click view for the description, and it takes you straight to Native Land Digital's resource page for Kanaka Maoli. And it brings up their websites, related maps, images, like you can extend your research straight from this map here onto Native Land Digital, and then of course research out if you like. Again, there's this corrections page and just showcasing that one. And if I'm gonna showcase one more. So shout out to Alakakai for being our chosen trail today. And let's which one should we do? This one. So we see 17 different nations that this layer goes through for our trail. So we have Oseti Sakowinsu. And I'll just keep going through it so you can see the vast tribal diversity that is on our North Country Trail. So in this spot, particular on the trail, there's varying nations. I apologize because my internet is going slow, so it's not popping up on my end. But this is our Native Lands National Trails map. It's being hosted on our account through Esri, and Esri has been a really great partner in this. Shout out to our Esri folks. If they're on the call, thank you so much, especially Patrick Ryan. He's been really one of like my mentors through Esri in creating this map, putting in like arcades, features, layers, getting the data uploaded. Just wanted to acknowledge him too. But that's our map, right there. I'm going to be hosted through PNTS. And so wanting to showcase our toolkit next, our Native Lands National Trails Toolkit. So again, this is just a centralized location to create our resources. So like we have our map here, and then we have our Trails resource guide. And so I'll take you to here where it'll bring you to different things of like resources of like engagement, and one of the highlights is the disclaimers, or just like a general FYI is again mention of like ground rules, but wanting to highlight that these resources are to be utilized in conjunction with the Partnership for the National Trail System Tribal Consultation and Engagement webinar series, as the webinar series has built and will build foundational education of the complexities and situational tribal awareness that is needed when working with Indigenous communities, nations, organizations, and professionals. So you get to hear them from them directly. And one of the things that we wanted to focus on is not to like reinvent the wheel, but just to really highlight and build that partnership of our Indigenous communities, our organizations. And so like here's some PNTS resources, background resources, like our map, and how you can acknowledge the land if you haven't done so already, like individually with your trail organization, but just some ways that will be there. And also our resources from our trail organizations. And I understand that we're kind of running low, so I'll just run through some of our examples that we have. So right here is our PNTS tribal consultation webinar series. So we have part 1, it's Foundations of Federal Indian Law, great one from Native American Rights Fund. Foundations of Tribal Consultation, Visions in its Future, Tribal Engagement, Distinguishing Consultation from Coordination. So if you have time, during your working day, just pop them on the screen, put some earbuds in, and really learn from Indigenous professionals themselves, and also those who have engaged with Indigenous communities and different types of consultation, coordination, and engagement. Highly recommend. And shout out to Kara for doing such a great job on that, coordinating that effort. The next one I wanted to highlight, and these are just examples that you can utilize within your trail organization, or and it comes on different varying levels, because our trail organizations are, again, on different levels of capacity building, and just wanting to showcase that engagement and consultation doesn't have, or engagement and collaboration doesn't have to be like a huge project, but instead something similar, like an online junior ranger with Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail. Like in their activity, their first one is tribal lands. I have an interactive feature where you can see like Spanish territory, Louisiana Purchase, but also like what that looks like for tribal homelands. And they also cite Native Land Digital. So great resource all around. Shout out to NLD. And then also wanting to highlight some signage that we have from our Arizona National Scenic Trail with the Dawn Autumn Nation. They've created the signage in ways that wanted to highlight the area, the lands that they go through, and just another type of consultation that is there within our trail system. And so those are just some examples I wanted to highlight. But when it comes to different types of engagement and consultation, I just want to throw it out there. You don't have to be an expert to research or learn or understand, but you do have to take real time to having the commitment to learn first in order to truly have meaningful engagement. Like the map, like the toolkit, it will change and adapt based on suggestions and needs from your trail organization, or if you're coming from Indigenous community, of what you can offer and have as well. And going into our National Trails, Native Lands National Trails logo, I would like to invite Audrey Lomahongva on to the Zoom. If you could unmute, and we'll hear from Audrey.
Cool. Hello. Thank you, Kiana, for bringing me on and giving me my little time to give my little spiel and all that. I was going through my social media page one day and I saw this post, a call for artists, and I looked at the deadline to apply. It turns out that the deadline was that night, so I gave it a shot, and I didn't think I would get the spot. But lucky enough, they picked me. They like my art skills so much, and over the weeks and months, I collaborated with Kiana and Karin, and then a whole bunch of other people on it too. We went through 4 drafts on either if the logo was going to be purely design based of Hopi fine pottery art or landscape design, but throughout the design process, we settled on the landscape design. And it's kind of looking through my point of view on how I view the landscapes. So the logo that you're looking at right now is a depiction of the San Francisco Peaks, which is in Flagstaff, Arizona. And to the right of it is the Mitten Butte, located over in Monument Valley, Northern Arizona as well. I wanted to incorporate, not just one landscape, but, because this is uh, Indigenous mapping research project that involves trail systems and ancestral trail systems. I wanted to incorporate two and just try to give a viewpoint of what I see the landscape as like. So you can see it down at the bottom left, you can see a spiral insignia down there, and ancestrally that's an insignia meaning in representation of migration. We were given kind of like a quest to branch out all over this world and leave pictographs. Nowadays it's called pictographs, but this migration symbol, the spiral, is a depiction of that. That's my viewpoint of trails traditionally. And what I see trails now more modernly is, that white band going back and forth, and that's the trail system that we all walk on today. So with that, you see the ancestral traditional side of it and the modern side of it. And the two striking lines on the side are, lightning strikes, because and lightning strikes, or those two striking patterns, represent, like hard times or hardships, because when you go on a trail, you don't know what you're going to expect. You can't walk on a smooth winding road and all of a sudden reach this really rocky, uneven terrain. So I wanted to incorporate that too. And behind the two landscape points is, in both Pueblo, Zuni, and Hopi, is Dawa, our sun design. And from Monument Valley, he rises, and at the San Francisco peaks, he sets. So I wanted to incorporate the two in that as well. And Dawa being part of 3 tribes, and maybe another multitude of tribes using him, they could look at this new logo design and say, oh, I know what this means. I know what this other symbol means, the spiral insignia. That means a migration symbol right there. So already right there, there's already a magnitude of people, that have have ancestral ties to it. And this is me working with what I could. This is as simple as I could get it. I do other artwork designs that are really out there and all that. And sorry, I didn't get to introduce myself. I kind of jumped into it right off the bat. But my name is Achi Lamahungva. I am both Navajo and Hopi. Yat Eshe Achi Lamahungva Yenishe, Ashi Hinishle, Betatni Bashishi, Kitsan Tasache, Loka Tane Tashanale. That was me introducing myself in Navajo Tane. Lamata Lungba, Achi Lamahungva Yan Pahan Matsiwa, Nyat Tsum Tia Nopi Matsiwa, Nyat Wapio Kita, Nyat Huspoa Hongwa. And that was me introducing myself on my Hopi side. So I try, in all my artwork, I try to incorporate both Navajo and Hopi, art styles. But here's the final product that I was glad to give to Kiana's presentation, and I'm happy that she brought me on board. This is my artwork being humble.
Yeah, and that's Audrey being humble. Like, his work is extraordinary. We also had a chance to meet before we worked on this project through a program called the Leadership for the Grand Canyon Trust, and where we spent a week-long adventure out on Hopi and Navajo land, and we connected there. And who knew that the universe would bring us together for this project? And super grateful for Achi. He's a rising leader within the Indigenous community as well. So shout out to Audrey. Awesome. Thank you. And to go back and reflect on lessons learned in the project future, there were a few challenges. Like, there's so many different partners. I remember being in the middle of the project, like, there's so many things that are happening at the same time, and different ways that we can go, which we do, and just funneling that into a place where we can just build and grow was one of like the biggest challenges personally, but learned throughout the project as well. Another one was timing. Work like this takes time. Like I mentioned before, the map took way longer than expected, along with like just the creation of the site on ArcGIS definitely took some time. And there were some personal challenges, like when like within my family, myself, my community, I do have to take some time to, you know, tend to those things. But other than that, it's been really great. Building relationships throughout the national trail system with different agencies, organizations, individuals. I love the trails community, so wonderful. Delivering this project work, again, didn't have no GIS background, but now have some. And also working specifically with the New England National Scenic Trail and creating an Indigenous territories layer specific to their research was really cool too. And some features of the project include where this would go, where this work would take us next, or what work's already out there happening, and that just could be, you know, showcased onto something like this. With trail interns working on similar scale or smaller scale projects, because when it comes to like those bigger types of projects or even like formal consultation, want to put it higher up of the organization levels to give respect to Indigenous communities and different trail organizations building and or strengthening relations with Indigenous nations. That's the overall hope, goal for the project in general. Maybe printed material. Maybe we're bringing in more artists, Indigenous youth to map different types of layers for the trails, or maybe a specific trail if your organization is interested. Some other ideas that we're throwing out there are traditional name layer added to our national native lands national trails map, which will be really awesome if that was something of interest to Indigenous nations too. And maybe additional partners outside of the trail organizations, outside of agencies, of other Indigenous communities are interested, or just any Indigenous or any organization in general. We're open to it. Because this is a very young project and it's only beginning from this specific point, but can go many different ways that everybody sees fit. And wanting to end with a call to action. There is responsibility to carry and share this knowledge and information with you. So gathering this knowledge, and much like with any Indigenous community or like within mine, you're shared all this knowledge, and then you have to hold that responsibility with you, that you will carry on and share this knowledge and information and use it to your best ability and how it'll fit your organization, individuals, etc. So I'm extending that out. And also challenge you to explore different avenues that will benefit your trail organization and partner with Indigenous communities and or organizations if that hasn't started already. But if that has, or want to highlight other things, share in the chat ways and or resources that you are working with and or for Indigenous communities and trails. I know when we were at the National Trails Workshop earlier this month, there was many different people who were coming up and sharing their different like expertise, knowledges, like relationships they had with communities and projects, etc. And it's just so vast. And I just encourage that sharing and to like lean on one another, that we don't have to do this alone. This is what this partnership for the National Trail System is here to like help facilitate, and that we can also do it among ourselves too. You can hear the microwave going off in the background. But I just want to say Alaka Askali, thank you. Special thanks to our IMRP project team, Karen, Kara, Callum, Ryan, Brenda, and Valerie. Special shout out to Ashley from PNTS, our whole PNTS crew. Again, Esri, Patrick, Ryan, Ashley Du, and Ben Knott. Shout out to Native Land Digital. Absolutely love the organization. Christine, Victor, Rudo, Kyle, and Michaela, ALCC, Chaz, Arden, Andrea, and our ALCC Zuni office, and also Bureau of Land Management, our national trail organizations who took the time out to meet with me, meet with Callum, talk about this project and get more insight and resources as well. The Forest Service for funding, Amanda Grace Santos, I worked very closely, and also Corey and Jay for their knowledge and being kind of like the guiding forces on the national trail system within our small Indigenous community that we do have. And gonna turn it over. Do we have any questions? Do we have time?
Yeah. Hey, Kiana, thank you so much. We just have a few minutes left in the time slot, but if anyone wants to stay on past that for a few minutes, that would be awesome. Either way, we'll send out this full recording so you'll be able to see the answers to the questions and have presenter contact info to connect with them afterwards as well. So we have a few questions here. The first one from Laura. First, she said, this is such an incredible resource. Thank you for bringing together information and resources that were previously separate. The really interesting thing to observe over the next few years is how trail organizations will actually use this resource. What are your wildest and most wonderful dreams of how trail groups and users will engage with this map? What do you hope will happen next? I know, Kiana, you briefly stated a few possible future uses of the map, but yeah, what do you hope will happen?
Karen, do you want to share the dreams? Because I feel like you articulated
well, I think we all have dreamed big on this project, and there's so many things like additional layers to add, etc. I think one of the things that we're hoping is that it will evolve, and Kiana will be the first of many interns, maybe with ancestral lands, that come on and evolve this project with these partners, because I think we've started something really amazing. Somebody put in the chat, my friend Pete from the AT, he put in story maps. I think that was one of also the other things that we really want to focus on, whether that's nationally, like a story map, but then diving into the trails specifically, each one, to highlight the communities that each trail passes through in a deeper, more meaningful way. Those are some of the things we've all brainstormed on. So Kiana, anything else to add to that? Or
yeah, those are really good ideas that we've had. We initially were like, can we do it? Like, we want to do it all. But then I was like, whoa, I'm just kind of one person. I can't do it all. So wanting to also have just like our trail organizations take that and sort of run with it, make it your own is my my way, because I like PNTS as a whole really facilitates that partnership in general, but it really does come down to the trail organizations, the agencies of where they want to take that. And I just really want to see where that goes, because each trail, each agency, each Native nation is vastly different. They have different types of knowing, being, art, and I just love seeing what other people create too. So and just in general, the protection of our lands is what I want for our in general, with our trails, our public lands, and that's what PNTS also helps facilitate. But that's just my overall goal and dream, is that we have more culturally relevant and competent individuals who are in different positions, and that we have Indigenous consultation or engagement, collaboration, always, not just here and there, but it's just a matter of hey, we're hopping on this, what do you think? And maybe we get to that point within the next 10 years, 20 years, but that's, my dreams and hopes for a future where we're all involved in taking care of our land. Thank you for that question, by the way.
Awesome. Thanks, Kiana and Karen. We do have another question in the chat from Jamie Lee Marks. First, they say, thank you so much for sharing this important work and for the work you've done. I'm curious how you approach challenges related to government, especially federal government staff who use these tools, working to connect communities that show up on the mapping tools and their cultural information to current tribal governments for consultation purposes.
Kiana, you want me to take first bat at one? Yeah. From the federal perspective, this is important to note, and Kiana mentioned earlier on in the presentation, the political or the legal requirement for federal government to do formal consultation. And that looks different, and it's law and abiding and the structure in which the federal government operates. But this new way of thinking opens it up to other ideas and communities and ways of outreach and engagement and partnership. And so I think the both can live together, and that's my belief and why I kind of push the boundaries of wanting to do this project and bringing Kiana on to, because it is profound and it's different from the way the federal government has operated. And so working with Partnership for the National Trail System, they're able to host on their website. It's going to be a tool for anybody and everybody, including federal staff, to use and see the difference in those layers of like federally recognized versus native lands digital. You can put all these things together so you're aware and you're educated on and you're being more inclusive. And so those are my thoughts on it. Kiana, anything else you want to add?
I think you explained it really well.
Yeah, it's that whole cultural, our new tribal liaison for BLM, Nicole Hanna, stated it perfectly when I shared with her this project, and it's the difference between the political and the cultural. And we live in the world we live in, and acknowledging both is extremely important. So.
Thank you.
Awesome. We just have one more question before we wrap up. Do you think that these mapping projects could help with the designations of traditional cultural districts?
I think so. I'm not too sure what a cultural district is.
Yeah, some of my colleagues around here probably would know
Okay.
better than myself, but I think anything that points out this type of cultural context and expansiveness of what is considered like a cultural landscape could help. So be glad to talk more or get folks in connection with the right people to talk about that.
Awesome. Before I give a few closing remarks, anyone have any last closing remarks you want to say before we end for today?
Well, I'll just say that, 2 years ago when this was kind of a seed planted, I just appreciate the faith and effort that all of the partners, kind of dived in head first to something that was new and different. And we really crossed into a new chapter, I think, of what our work can be in the federal government. So from my perspective, that's just profoundly exciting. So thank you all for your interest today. And I really thank Kiana for being exactly what this project needed, the shining star for the project. So thanks, Kiana.
Elako, thank you again, Karen. Just in general, Elako Ascoli, really from the from deep in my heart, from all the organizations, the partners, the individuals who are on this project. Could not have done it alone whatsoever, but it's a truly something that really brought us together, and that's what really stood out to me on how much it means to us to get this work out there, how much it means to us right now and to our future generations, and how this partnership would benefit for land stewardship. And I'm excited to see everything that comes from it from here on out. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.
Awesome. Thank you everyone so much for attending today's session. And a special thank you to Karen, Michaela, Ryan, Kyle, Autry for all they shared about the project. And definitely a big shout out to Kiana for presenting today and just all her work and her dedication and leadership on this Indigenous mapping and research project. I kindly ask that you scan the QR code on the screen to take a very brief feedback survey about this webinar today. And while you do that, I'm just going to let you know that you'll be receiving an email with a link to the recording shortly, along with presenter contact information. And we will also notify you when the map becomes available on PNTS website. So please keep in touch with what PNTS is doing via our social media. And thank you again so much to our wonderful presenters and to everyone who attended today. Have a great rest of your day.